First story. Wife had a few emotional affairs and a not just friends friend. I am lost, sad, angry, sick and don't know what to do. Trying R. I think this will be a long post. I've been struggling for a while now and it has been a roller coaster for me. I've been debating a while to post here since the latest revelation the beginning of October 2023. And I guess since I have not made good progress in any direction except the bathroom scale, that I might as well use this platform to seek advice, vent a little and maybe even receive a little relief. Background is my wife, 41F, and I, 43M, have been married for just over 16 years and we have 4 children together. We are different nationalities as I am of white European descent and she is a Filipino. We met a few years after I got out of the military. She was the longest relationship I ever had when we married and started living together, 18 months give or take a few weeks. I loved her dearly but we had some rough patches throughout the years, but we always managed to work things out. Some of the dust-ups were, she hated my job, I was a truck driver, but she went with me all over the country. I took her to every state in the lower 48 United States, and we say quite a lot of beauty from the cab of my truck. She was very emotional and would often take what I said out of context. Sometimes this would lead to my cab being extremely icy between us. She once asked me why I couldn't be like my brother-in-law, computer geek and get a job and be home every day. I was demoralized, but eventually chalked it up to a language barrier. She convinced me she used the wrong words to explain her feelings. Later on she got pregnant and 9 months later we welcomed my first son. I owned my truck so I think I was out of work for nearly 3 months enjoying my new small little family, and when the money ran out, I had to go back to work. We decided to live on the truck again, just me, my wife and my son. It was pure bliss. As my son reached the age of 5 months, he would pull himself up to stand using the bunk ladder and shake it furiously while growling and screaming with excitement. He was the cutest because he had such a mop of hair and was so vocal and was walking by 6 months. Well, living in such close proximity to my wife had some consequences, and she became pregnant with my first daughter around the time we went back to work. We were planning on having kids soon when my wife accidentally got pregnant with my son, but she wanted to wait a while before having another and well, I was just so excited for those kinds of relations again after her cutting me off and not in the mood all the time that ops. When my wife was 7 months pregnant, she was too uncomfortable on the truck trying to take care of our rambunctious son, so she decided to start staying at home. It was hell on me and on us. With her being really emotional, it led to many arguments, and she would accuse me of not caring about our family, or even cheating. It's rough, but being apart, we sexted quite a bit and I admit I watched porn from time to time. She became aware of this and exploded. I thought she knew but she says she didn't and she acted as if I was cheating with the women in the porn videos. I'm kind of shocked because she watched a couple of pornos with me before and during our marriage, and I took that as tacit approval. Well, we patched things up and I continued to drive truck to support our family. Things were always tight, and my wife's animosity would show quite a bit. She couldn't understand why every time I came home, I had to put my truck in the shop and spend $2,000 to $3,000 fixing it. My truck was getting old, but it ran good. I'd just put off fixing most of it until I reached home so I could spend the downtime with them. I think what really irked her was the fact that we couldn't buy new furniture or a new car or whatever her heart desired at that moment. She couldn't or wouldn't comprehend the difference between business expenses and personal expenses. To her, they were all the same. Eventually I would capitulate and buy her what she wanted: furniture, electronics, jewelry, and a new car. Even with this, she would periodically accuse me of having another family somewhere that I was spending my time and money with. She'd do it in such a way that I didn't know if she was serious or not, even though she could see me on video chat and I was driving between 2,700 and 3,600 miles a week. Well, after 6 years of marriage and 10 years running my own trucking company, I decided I was missing my family so much, and I pushed for growth really hard so I could start doing more work locally as opposed to the OTR grind. 2014 was a bad year for me, though, and even though I had a few trucks and a few drivers, I never found my rhythm. That fall my company had 2 truck engines blow and a transmission throw a bearing. During the same time I had a set of team drivers split. One had health issues, the other didn't want to drive OTR by himself. A driver abandoned a truck 2 states away, and a driver who I was training had a heart attack and lost his license. I went from a $3,000 profit per week and growing steady to literally realizing I was going to have to file for bankruptcy in 6 weeks. I held off another 2 weeks to see if I could hire replacements, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. After I wound down my business, I started driving locally. I figured, after my epic failure, I'd drive local and make my wife happy by being home every night. That didn't happen because even though I was home every night, I was working 12 to 14 hours per day. It was never enough. I went from home for a week every month or 2 to home every night, but the money sucked and my wife didn't like my work hours. I tried finding another job, but working so much doesn't give much time to find another job. And I eventually reasoned with my wife that I made enough off of being a disabled vet that I could retire after 5 more years of driving. That wasn't meant to be either. The company that I was working for locally decided to pull out of my area after 3.5 years of employment with them. I had to start over again so soon and my wife wasn't happy again. We talked. She'd enjoyed nearly 8 years of being a SOM. She agreed to get a job so I could take my time and find a better career than the use, abuse, and discard trucking industry. 5 months later, I got a part-time non-career job working for one of the 3 big 3 delivery companies, and 2 years later, I got a career spot. You'd think after everything I did for my wife, eventually giving her everything she wanted, that she'd be happy that I finally got a job with decent pay and decent hours, and our relationship issues would be behind us. I was sorely mistaken. A few months before I got my career position, my world came crashing down. My wife was constantly argumentative. I couldn't do anything right. I wasn't giving her enough attention. I couldn't satisfy her for anything. Our bedroom wasn't dead, but to me it didn't seem alive either. But we'd been married for 10 years, and being older, I was thinking maybe we're just getting old. Karma kind of smiled down on me one night, or maybe not, and I was venting to my mother about the relationship issues I was having. I figured her and my dad have had a successful marriage for 35 plus years. Not only was she a good shoulder to cry on, who better to tell me what I'm doing wrong or how to deal with a wife who isn't satisfied? Well, like a dumbass, I accidentally sent an inflammatory message that was meant for my mom to my wife. I decided that since my wife was quiet and not screaming like a banshee, that she must not have noticed, and I would just quietly sneak her phone and delete the message so as not to engage in the coming battle. Oh God, it was terrible, and I'm literally crying right now thinking how my life didn't go anywhere where I thought it would. When I grabbed her phone from the back of the couch, she really didn't notice me. But when I unlocked her phone, my heart sank into my stomach with the messages I saw. I didn't see my message at first because she had a few unread messages as she was watching TV at the time. She was actively sexting a guy from a nearby town. It was the most grotesque thing to me cause for 10 years she accused me of every malfeasance under the sun. I suppose didn't love her, had a secret family. She repeatedly told me if I ever cheated that she'd take the kids and leave me. And the person she was accusing me of being was her all along. She was talking about what she wanted to do to him and grab his dick and things that she never allowed me to do. He was reciprocating everything. I don't even know how long it has been going on because it was obvious she had been deleting messages as the night went on. They were making plans to meet up and such too. My wife saw me looking at her phone and screamed at me. I retreated to the bathroom and locked the door, not sure of what to do next. I stayed in the bathroom while my wife went through every cliché. It wasn't what it looked like. It didn't mean anything. I only love you. I quipped back, you only love me and love grabbing his dick. You're a fucking cheater and your hypocrisy makes me sick. I saved the texts and returned her phone, and I guess I started interrogating her. She said she only been messaging him for a few weeks and that this was the first time sexting and that they never exchanged pics or met. I didn't believe her, cause how do you convince this is okay behavior? I convinced her it would be best for her to sleep on the couch. I was fortunate to not have to work the next day, and I used it to seek counsel. I told my parents what was going on and I called my pastor and asked to meet. I'm fairly religious and I felt it was important to get his perspective and advice. He told me it's not as uncommon as I had believed, that many marriages have problems, and that mine isn't even the only one in our church. We came up with a plan that I thought was good, that had some consequences, but also worked us toward reconciliation. Before this, she wasn't a member of our church. She was a Catholic, and I was a Lutheran. We'd split our church attendance between mine and hers. I told her that I wasn't going to leave or ask her to leave, and that after consideration that we could eventually reconcile. No contact with AP. This wasn't difficult, as she messaged him the night I found out and he ghosted her. She needed to become a member of my church. We needed to attend marriage counseling. Some of her friends were rumored to be engaged in an extramarital affair, and that she was to cut these people off and have no contact with them either. I was going to track her location and install monitoring software on her phone, and she better be where she says she'll be, or R is off the table, no lying. If I found out any lies were told, R was off the table. Update. So, we started checking off the boxes. We went through marriage counseling, and I was told that I was partly to blame for not giving my wife enough attention, and by cussing quite often. In my defense, I'm quite pragmatic and spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. I cuss so much sailors blush, and I'm so blunt perfectly flat walls are jealous. I acknowledge that, yes, I contributed to the environment that led to my wife's EA. I was tried installing monitoring software on my wife's phone, but it was an utter failure. I paid for software to be told that I need to clone her iPhone on another iPhone, and there was no software. Ended up having to dispute the charge because I was defrauded by the software company. I gave up on that software and just used Life360 for a while to monitor her location. Not incessantly, but periodically. Eventually I started to trust her again, and even Life360 went away. When she officially became a member of my church, I asked her what she wanted me to do with all of the texts I'd saved as evidence, and I allowed her to delete them. This would turn out to be a huge mistake a few years later. She also requested that we never talk about her EA again, as it hurt her as much as it hurt me. I was given advice that basically said since we've reconciled that I shouldn't use that act as a weapon to beat her over the head with. I took that to mean that her request was fair, and I agreed. That was just as foolish as when I had allowed her to delete all of the messages I'd saved of her EA. Rest of 2020 went well. 2021 and then 2022 came and went. All was well, or so I thought. In the spring of 2023, her friend group gained a new addition. This was a recently divorced man who recently moved to our area. I didn't think much of it because her friends group was always occupied by the husbands of her friends, and I had met quite a few of them. And even though I'm not much of a social butterfly, I didn't totally dislike my interactions with them. I bet many of you can think where this is going, and you'd probably be half right. She told me of this guy and how she thought I would like to be friends with him. I'm not a friendly guy. I'm not an asshole either, but generally speaking, people just piss me off by doing stupid shit. I have very few friends, and I lost a few close friends while I was in the military, and quite frankly, I would rather be alone than go through that pain again. My wife wouldn't allow me to have any friends either, but you know what, I really didn't care at that time about that much cause of my previous statements on friendship. My wife would have these parties more like gatherings where her and her group would get together and socialize. These would happen once or twice a month depending on if there were other reasons to partake. If there were no birthdays, they'd get together once a month. If there were 2 birthdays, they were going to throw 2 parties that month. Well, it started off her just telling me that he's nice, interesting, that I'd like him. A month or 2 later I find out that her friends and her had a get-together at his place, and that during that get-together he had some furniture he needed to get rid of, and I guess he offered it to her. I got roped into taking my truck over there to load it up and bring it home. I wasn't too uneasy about it yet, but my spidey senses didn't feel right either. August rolls around, and I'm informed by my wife that she and her friends are going to attend a party in another state, and that she would be staying the night at her friend's house, as it would be too late to drive home when she got back. I didn't think much of it at that time, but about a week before the party she informs me that she's going to ride to this party with this recently divorced man. It was at this moment I just started dying inside, because with everything I knew this was bullshit. I tried to keep cool even though I was dying. I started asking more questions. I was snooping on my wife's phone. But it's super hard to snoop because when it comes to this friends group and this other dude, they all speak in her native dialect and I don't speak it. To me, I started to think that she's communicating this way not just because she's more comfortable with it, but because I don't know it. I used Google as best as I can, but because her dialect isn't popular, the translations aren't the best. I don't find much in her friend group. But in the messages with the dude she wants to ride with, there isn't much either, but some things that might constitute light flirting. I kind of get the feeling that the flirting that was there was being initiated by my wife, and the dude kind of seemed uneasy. Yeah, she's married to a slightly unhinged disabled Marine combat vet. I would be nervous too if I was in his shoes. That same week she bought a dress off Amazon and modeled what she wanted to wear that night. Literally, it's a red evening gown called Sexy Party Dress in its description, and she had 5-inch platform stilettos with matching handbag. Long story short, there isn't a smoking gun, just a gut feeling something isn't right. I don't know if I'm losing my mind or losing my wife, and my stomach is turning into knots, and I'm having adrenaline dump into my bloodstream, as if I was back in Iraq again. I never had these feelings before, but I was afraid that I was losing my wife and the closest thing to a friend that I've had in 15.5 years at that time. I decided to talk to my wife to try and ease my concerns. I didn't have any evidence, but I had several very oddly combined coincidences. I tried to talk to my wife, but she flat out denied and minimized my concerns, called me controlling and insecure. She reasoned that she had to ride with him because her friends already filled up the other car that was driving there. She said I had nothing to worry about because supposedly his mom and another woman were going to ride with them there. She said that he doesn't like their race and he only interested in white women. She said she picked those clothes because they looked nice. She told me she'd been planning this for a month and already paid her $50 for ticket and didn't want to waste it. Long story short, she made me out to be insane and insecure. I felt terrible. My world felt like it was crumbling around me, and I didn't know what to believe. On one hand, I wanted to trust her, but on the other, how could I? To me, it was obvious that they were more than just friends, because why would you be discussing dating preferences? That's not platonic in the least. Maybe she overheard him talking to someone, but obviously they're not talking about knitting or baking. I then remembered she was going to spend the night at her friend's house. Is this code for his house? Was he dropping her off at another friend's house? Why does she think this is okay? I said no, I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't feel comfortable with the situation. I told her I couldn't let her attend an out-of-state party by riding with a recently divorced dude. Well, That's when the fight started, I guess, cause she let me have it in with both barrels, proverbially of course. She called me insecure again and jealous and couldn't believe how insecure I was. I opened up and flat out told her, with her history, aka past EA, you're damn right I'm unsecure and I flat out don't trust you on this anymore. She cried and threw a tantrum when I brought up her past EA. She literally gave me the cold shoulder for the next day, and I was dying inside trying to figure out why she was so adamant to dress so provocatively and demand I allow her to drive out of state with another guy. I came up with a plan and decided to try and make peace with my wife and compromise. No, I wasn't going to allow her to ride down there with anyone because at this point how do I know that she not gonna pull the switcheroo and wind up in his vehicle again? How do I know her friends won't fill up their car and make her ride with him after the fact? I presented her with the idea that we could turn it into a mini vacation. I told her, why can't I take you to the party? She told me you don't have a ticket and they're sold out. I said, so what? I can at least drive you there, drop you off and pick you up when you're finished. I wasn't worried about what would happen at the party. I was more worried about her being isolated with this guy and no support from friends to do the right thing. She asked me what about the kids and I told her that we could all go. I would get us a hotel with a pool and we'll take you to the party, return to hotel, swim, eat, watch TV, and when you're ready come pick you up. I thought it was a good compromise. It allowed me to ease my concerns and her to attend the party. I was not prepared for her to flat out tell me that she didn't want to go anymore. I couldn't believe this. She was willing to go to war with me to have this guy take her to this party, and when I came up with what I thought was a good compromise, she didn't want to go anymore? I said it didn't make any sense. I literally already paid for the room. She paid for the ticket and now she doesn't want to go anymore? I asked her about this and questioned her motives and eventually she agreed to the compromise. I was feeling good again after her party. I thought it was a win. I thought we still had a happy marriage, and even though my wife was a little misguided, aren't we all at sometimes, I thought she loved me and was happy. Well, little more than a month went by and all my feelings of love, happiness, and security were shattered. My wife asked if she could attend a friend's birthday party nearby. I really didn't have any problem with it. I thought our relationship was back and healed from the out-of-state party fiasco, and I agreed and hoped she had a good time. Later that night, my youngest daughter was playing on her mother's iPad and trying to install another game. It wouldn't let her because there wasn't enough storage space on it, and she asked her older sister for help. My oldest daughter told her there wasn't enough storage, and that they needed to delete some things in order to create enough space, and asked me if she could delete some things. I agreed. A few minutes later my daughters asked me, "Daddy, who's this guy on Mommy's iPad?" I never thought my world could get so dark. When I caught my wife's first EA, my kids knew something was going on but they never found out what. We told them we're working on problems and assured them everything was okay and would work out, and it largely did work out. Now, my kids are the ones who find out that my wife wasn't on the up and up with me. There was 2 pictures of the same guy, nothing dirty, on her iPad, and I didn't know this guy. This wasn't the guy who she wanted to get a ride with to a party, and this iPad wasn't old enough to have any pictures from the first incident. It was the worst because all I could do is just sit and wait for my wife to come home to question her about it. I was hoping it was nothing, but the pictures looked like they were selfies someone would use as a dating profile pic or something. All I knew is that my wife used the iPad to take a picture of her phone, which had the pic of the dude on it. The first pic was in December of 2022, and the last pic was February of 2023. When my wife arrived home late that night, I confronted her and my nightmare began. Turns out my wife used her iPad to take a pic of her phone screen because she was using Snapchat and she couldn't take a screenshot. It turns out that the guy she started chatting with on Snapchat is the boyfriend of one of her married friends. So, the friend that was having an affair that I asked to be cut off and have no contact with was bringing her boyfriend to parties, and my wife not only didn't feel restrained, but decided to start Snapchatting with him. I don't know how often they chatted, and when I asked my wife, she said, only a few times. I don't know what they talked about, but when I asked, she said, we talked about life. When I asked if that included sex acts, she didn't say anything at first, but eventually said no, just life stuff. I retorted, well, sex is life. You can't have life without it. I asked her why did she start chatting him in December, and I never got an answer. To me, this is important because I work for one of the big 3 delivery companies, and guess what? I work a lot of overtime in December. The last proof of a convo was in February, and this is also important to me. My grandmother died, and I had to travel quite far to attend her funeral, and was gone for 4 days. So when I'm at my lowest, she's Snapchatting this guy about life. I asked her why, and she said, I just wanted his pic to show other friends. I've lost 50 fucking pounds since then and have mood swings, depression, anxiety, despair, and everything else. I feel absolutely miserable. She told me it was just stalking. I reminded her that over the course of her having Snapchat on her phone, she told me it was cause she wanted to use it to chat with our kids. Supposedly they liked the face filters. I said, it's obvious that it was a lie because you never once told me that you were Snapchatting with other men, and especially other men who were introduced to you by people you were supposed to be no contact with. Once again, I sought out the counsel of my pastor and he said it's fixable. All of this happened in October of 2023 and I was gearing up for the holidays. My main goal was let's make it through Christmas and New Year's. We started marriage counseling in November of 2023 and I wasn't expecting a miracle or anything, or maybe I was. Made it through 4 counseling sessions before I told my pastor he was full of shit. He literally pulled out the same counseling guides we used the first time, about bearing each other's burdens and sanctity of marriage and some other crap. He said it would be her job to do the heavy lifting on reconciliation, but nope, I had to do everything. I demanded she do IC and she drug her feet and complained. She even said during one of my many outburst mood swings that I'm the one that needed counseling. I acknowledged she was right and that I needed more than counseling. It's December and I'm dealing with the second EA of my wife and hella overtime with no time to stop and process anything. I decided if I couldn't get solace or peace, then I'd get even. I started chatting with some women that I met online through a dating app. Literally the most benign, uncomfortable chats in my history. Very akin to 3rd graders trying to get to know their classmates better, and I guess that's what I get for being introverted. Well, my wife found out and I literally laughed in her face and repeated her words, it's just talking, we only talked about life stuff. It felt really good watching the despair on my wife's face after those comments. I think for the first time ever she finally realized how much pain she caused me. I wish I could say it worked out, but guess what? I'm writing everything down here on Reddit because that relief was short-lived and I crawled back into my cave. I've learned so much from this experience. I read not just friends started Ready, Love and Respect. I have a few more books on my reading list too, but it doesn't seem like anything is really helping me. I go from loving her, needing her, to hating her and loathing her all in a few hours. I go from passionate sex with her to bitter resentment of myself because I can leave her. I guess that might be trauma bonding or hysterical bonding. I don't know. I found out about monkey branching and trickle troughing, and because all of her Snapchats automatically delete, I've realized that I will never get the answers I wanted. And that my wife is the type of person who will never tell me anything more than what I can prove, and she's proved that over and over and over again. And in the end, all I can do is pour out my heart here on Reddit. My life fucking sucks balls, and as much as I want to change it by getting rid of my life, I just have that bad feeling that the devil I know, my wife, is better than the devil I don't, all the other cheating hoes out there. At one time it might have been easy for me to leave her 20 years ago. I was 25 pounds leaner than I am now and a whole lot better looking. Hell, I'm so old and beat up looking now I can't even pull women 20 years older than me and 200 pounds heavier. So, what do I expect from writing this novel? I really don't know. How about some encouragement? Advice on how to cope? Don't say I see. I am 8 weeks into IC and I'm totally dissatisfied and skeptical. If I switch providers again I'll have to start over and still wind up with a quack that doesn't say shit or gives open-ended answers that don't mean anything. Shit, I think she's learned more about therapy from me than me learning how to heal and move forward from her. I don't know what else to share or even what else I need to learn. I feel like I'm in limbo. I pray to God for answers and clarity and guidance, but I've been praying for that for a long time. I think I'm broken because I at least thought I knew what God was telling me to do. Update. D-Day number 2 10 months ago, wayward wife has birthday approaching. So, I'm very conflicted on what I should do for her or get her since she's put me through hell. She's sorry, we tried counseling. I hated it, everything seemed like it was my fault, so we just kind of coexist. My wife is a very celebratory person. Every special event has to have a party and gifts and such. I didn't dwell on it much, but the closer I get to her birthday the more nervous I get. I already bought her a birthday card. I already know what kind of cake she wants and I know she will want a present. She got very offended any time in the past if I brought her infidelities up after the moments we stopped IC and MC. She seems to be taking the "why do you keep bringing it up?" This isn't helping to heal, or she gets really sad and doesn't do anything but cry. Of course she's manipulating me. Been pointed out our codependency is bad and yeah, we are very dependent on each other. We have kids together, and the way I see it there's no hope for a split until the kids get older. A lot older. I don't see a life that can exist without her, so I just swallow my pride and suck it up and try to act normal. So, my biggest dilemma is now, what should I be doing for her on her first birthday after the D-Day, since we are trying for our. Obviously I have got her a card, but I know she expects more. She's done an okay job of putting effort into our relationship, but how do I gauge what to get her, or how much I should spend? Should I focus on high thought intrinsic value or low thought? Something in the middle? Should I take a stand and do something snarky or mention I can't do more cause of her indiscretions? Should I strive for normalcy and continue to fake it till I make it? Should I think of something deep and loving to write in her card or write nothing at all? I struggle with dishonesty, and find it very disingenuous if I lied and said things that I know she would want to hear, so there's literally no way I would be able to tell her that I'm so deeply in love with her, 'cause I'm not. That doesn't mean I don't love her, it just means my love is different for her now than before. At the same token, I don't want to G and destroy her as we're still trying our. So I know I probably shouldn't write anything about me or my current confliction, and that I should try to find a middle ground that maybe has multiple meanings. I just never thought it would be this hard to deal with having to celebrate her birthday, and I could use some advice.